Hello and welcome to On Leading with Greatness. I'm Jim Salvucci. This week's installment, Unprincipled Principal, Abbott Elementary and the Truth About Horrid Bossing. After finding no qualified candidates for the position of principal, the school board is extremely pleased to announce the appointment of David Steele to the post. Philip Streifer. Have you ever seen the sitcom Abbott Elementary? It's set in an under-resourced public school in a black section of Philadelphia and stands out as an example of workplace comedy. I'm not a big fan of the sitcom genre, but this one's original enough to make it enjoyable and remains blissfully free of laugh tracks, taglines, and stock gags. Among the many memorable characters populating the school, my favorite is the principal, Ava Coleman. She's played by Janelle James, who brilliantly portrays a boss who somehow comes across as unctuous and even noxious while still charming the other characters and the audience. I don't quite know how James pulls off this feat, but it's a scene-stealing tour de force performance every time. To say James's Ava is self-serving is an understatement, but she can also be outward-looking, if only when you least expect it. Overall, though, she's simply a terrible boss, and therefore a lousy leader for her struggling little school. Even so, Ava's words and actions teem with sharp revelations about the impact crappy bosses have on the day-to-day workplace. One notable moment occurs in season 4 when she blurts out, "I hate bosses. That's why I became a principal. I don't have any." This line, like many of the lines she delivers in her verbal staccato, passes so quickly that it might register only subconsciously. The gag works as both a cheap joke and an explosive confession, as its subtle wordplay reveals a truth. Did I mention I'm a former literature professor? First and most obviously, it reflects an attitude that many bosses and would-be bosses have, that the main reason to be a boss is to not have anyone directly above you. That way you're free to avoid scrutiny and only give, not receive, orders. Of course, that also leaves you free to scrutinize your employees without limit while issuing arbitrary diktats. The hypocrisy is the point. But don't overlook the puckish play on words, centering on the homonym principal. The literal interpretation assumes that she's referring to her job title, school principal, and that she has no bosses or principals above her. But we're not reading a script. We're watching a show and listening to the dialogue. To the ear, principal has two meanings: the head of a school or a fundamental code of conduct. Our principles, in that second sense, guide our actions. We often use the term interchangeably with values. Therefore, Ava tells us both that she has no principles or bosses overseeing her behavior and that she has no principles or values undergirding her behavior. Of course, that's not quite true in her case. In fact, she does face school district supervision, even if she has plenty of autonomy to run her school. Similarly, while she enjoys projecting an air of utter amorality, she sporadically punctuates it with abrupt bouts of conscience and even decency. Nonetheless, Ava's intricacies aside, her statement captures perfectly the dual nature of bossing, a lack of serious oversight combined with a lack of moral foundations. I'm not saying that anyone with a bossing title is totally bereft of principles. What I mean is that the typical bossing attitude tends toward amorality, immorality, and self-dealing. The very reverse of the leadership attitude. Most bosses center their practice on themselves, just like Ava, while true leaders center on others. The typical boss has only one lens, and it's apparently more reflective than refractive. I can hear some of you out there now. Here he goes again, trashing bosses and boosting leaders. You got me. I do it all the time in my writing, my speeches, and my podcast appearances. Yet when I do, I'm often met by surprise. Why? Isn't it obvious that people who think and act like bosses aren't leaders? To my mind, like a boss is a flagrant insult. Let's take another look at Ava from Abbott. You may have watched the show and dismissed her as mostly over the top, and I agree. Still, I have a friend who actually teaches in Philly, and he assures me that at least one principal he worked for behaved much like Ava, imperiously and all in it for herself. So what does Ava do that's so bad? A few adjectives come to mind: self-absorbed, self-dealing, rude, mean, overbearing, arbitrary, vain, dishonest, and manipulative. She plays favorites and delights in tormenting the main character, Janine, a cruel motif played for laughs. But Ava does sport some nuance. One running joke is that she seems to have far more money than any principal could earn, which keeps her in high finance and high living. She also boasts an unlikely variety of close celebrity connections, which always turns out to be not a mere boast. She really hangs out with famous friends. These gags make her a snob, which is another dimension of her bossing. More telling, though, every now and again her mask slips, exposing her real affection for this school and the people in it. Without those fleeting reveals, she would drift into embarrassing caricature, the ogre boss. By redeeming her this way, the other characters and the audience can't simply hate her. She may pretend as principal to have no principles, or even redeeming qualities, but she secretly does. In this way, Ava, as over-the-top as she seems, manifests a bit of bossing realism. While I regularly portray bosses as workplace monsters, that portrayal is itself a caricature that helps clarify my points about the virtues of true leadership. To be clear, I certainly understand that no one is bad all the time, not even Ava. Unfortunately, people tend to learn the wrong lesson from the equivocal nature of bad bosses, which is a major reason I gloss over it. I want to offset our natural inclination to search out and overemphasize the good in people, no matter how elusive or minuscule, particularly when those people have power over us. How many times have I heard that an abusive boss isn't all bad? So what? Does one have to be all bad to be bad? It would be equally unreasonable for a leader to claim to be all good, right? It's a matter of symmetry. Which quality outweighs the other, goodness or badness? That's the lesson of Ava. She's definitely not all bad, and her celebrity friends apparently see only the good in her. But by every objective measure, as a boss, she's nothing short of horrible. Abusive, acquisitive, indifferent, and, well, bossy. She's neither a good person nor a good principal. When she does succeed, such as when she extorts money from a local developer to buy Abbott much-needed computers, she does the right thing in the wrong way and often for the wrong reason. Ava's bad outweighs her good by a lot, which puts her in line with every crappy boss out there. And while that ambivalence makes her a more interesting character to round out the cast of Abbott Elementary and provides Janelle James the opportunity to show off her considerable comedic acting chops, from a leadership perspective, she's a disaster. In other words, ultimately, Ava Coleman is a lousy principal and just one more unprincipled lousy boss in a world of lousy bosses. How effectively do you assess the relative goodness of other leaders? How do you assess your leadership? Leaders must recognize the good and bad in everyone, and which outweighs the other, and I can help. Unlock the leader within. Download my free resource, the Transform to Greatness Toolkit, now at thegreatleadershiptoolkit.com. I look forward to hearing from you.